We want to get strong and move well and develop enough power out of a small package. It takes thousands and thousands of reps. It's got to suck a little bit.
This is the VRE Podcast. Okie dokie, we're back. Yes, with our second installment of the Fit for 24 series. We got Steve from Thrash Motor Co. giving us the goods on how to keep fit, how to keep healthy, and how to make our riding better. Our last episode, if you haven't listened to it, I would suggest you listen to that before this one. We touched on a couple of the key foundations that you kind of need to nail down before you start tackling what we're going to be talking about today. So that's hydration, nutrition, and sleep recovery, that sort of thing. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that, and then come back and check this one out. So for this one, me and you were discussing all the ins and outs of this kind of series we're doing. And so now that we've kind of got these basics nailed down, we're talking about more specific, fitness exercise stuff that people would normally associate with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things, what are we doing? So now that we got the hydration, we got the sleep, we got the nutrition nailed down, what's next?
Yeah. This is a great segue to the last section that we did in round one on the hydration and nutrition and stuff. And I mean, from the very onset of any thoughts towards making yourself better or more fit, whether it's riding or whatever your goals are, I think ultimately both of those combined, the what we spoke about in the first episode and this, it all comes down to that consistency piece. Consistency is king. Absolutely. There's no question there. And that goes for diet, sleep, hydration, and exercise. So I would rather get people to establish their lifestyle that fits all of this, right? You're taking care of yourself from a hydration standpoint and a nutrition standpoint, and now you're ready to start going to the gym or doing something at home or just being a little bit more active. I think every decision has to be based around being able to maintain that and stay consistent with it, not biting off more than you can chew, so to speak. A lot of people, just in the nutrition piece, everyone has heard examples of people that, especially around New Year's Eve, resolutions. People are going to try that new big diet or try this new big thing or whatever, and oftentimes they're trying to accomplish a change that is massive, hoping for results immediately. And I don't preach that. It's not a method that works very well because it's so easy to fall off of. What we're looking to do is change your life, change your lifestyle around so that now, hydrating and nourishing yourself appropriately and getting an adequate amount of exercise in is now ingrained in your life. And that's something you're going to carry on forever. That's my hopes and my dreams, is that we're not trying to do fad diets or fad workouts. This is lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and
so that's just kind of
it sounds big, but you're just being honest, right? It's we're better habits, and you stick to those, and those will end up being your default behaviors. And as you stick to that more and more, i.e. consistency,
Yeah,
things change. Like your life will change.
absolutely. Yeah. Like you're not always going to go into the gym and squat or like bench like a one RM, like a personal record, like a PR or something. You're going to have shitty days in the gym. You're going to have shitty days on the bike. Um, excuse me. But, just the the most effective way that's been proven is consistent. It's just consistency. There's no one has done anything on ever um, on like short term goals when it comes to fitness. You can't really do it. And again, going back to the first episode, talking about my 3 pillars of injury prevention, riding for a long day, and then riding when I'm 80. Everything I do is based on those, and you can see now how, I think anyway, that consistency for those, like with keeping those pillars in your sights at all times, that's how you're going to get to be riding when you're 80. You're not going to be able to be out of shape and want to get in shape at 75 so that you can ride at 80. Let's start now and maintain it throughout your whole life. That's my goal. Because it's the only, really, honestly, it's just the only one that works.
Right. So people are busy these days. Everybody's working. Everybody's got their kids or whatever. Lots of folks with limited time. What are some of the things? Like, do you have any tips or tricks or advice, recommendations, what have you, for folks on a limited time schedule? So, like, if they only got 20 minutes, they only got an hour, they only got whatever they got.
Yeah.
They focus on.
Great question. For dirt biking specifically, because that's all what I do. It does have knock-on effects to general health and fitness. But it is a little different. Also, I think we've discussed before about how like hockey has like specifically kind of designed workout that's good for hockey, and now I've created this thing for dirt biking. But there's also rugby and golf and everyone else that has kind of their own lanes in which the top tier athletes in each category have kind of defined what that looks like.
Right.
So what I've done in dealing with my top athletes and all my athletes that have gone and done, some pretty tremendous things over the last couple of years, is really be able to hone that down specifically for dirt biking. So I like to keep things really simple, a lot more simple than people think, I think. Plain and simply, whether you've got 1 day a week for 60 minutes or you've got 5 days a week at 60 minutes, there are some universal movements that need to be in there somehow. So let me walk you through those. I made a little chart, of course, because I like charts.
Take notes, people.
I'll send this to you to attach in some form.
Mm-hmm.
So every program needs to have some version of a squat. Every program needs to have some version of a lunge. Every program needs some version of a hinge movement, typically like a deadlift style. But you need to be able to hinge. And you need to be able to push and pull, like bench press and row. Some versions, right? I think good trainers, good coaches have more ways to get the same kind of things accomplished for their clients they're not necessarily accomplishing much that's different. It's that a good coach finds ways around mobility issues, but also equipment issues. Not everyone has access to like a full gym or whatever. So this list of kind of mandatory basics in a program is not about what equipment you have or how well you move, but this is what every program needs to have a little bit of. So squat, lunge, hinge, push and pull. Those are your 4 absolute staples. And then from there, you have your auxiliary movements. Now, where many sports, those first 4 will stay the same, like everyone in football and everyone in hockey and everyone needs to have that squat, lunge, hinge, push and pull. But things start to get real specific into dirt biking once we get into kind of your auxiliary movements. So what do I mean by auxiliary movements? Specifically for dirt biking, we're looking for core strength. Everyone knows I'm big on core strength. Right? So we're talking your planks, your dead bugs, kettlebell work, farmer's carry, kettlebell marching, halos, etc. Excuse me, it's really dry here. So lots of core work that falls under auxiliary. Mobility work, right? Making sure your shoulders are strong and your hips are strong and everything is moving well there. And in the auxiliary category as well would fall a lot of my injury prevention type stuff. So, like, I'm not sure what the actual number of the statistic is. I'd have to look it up. But some significantly high percentage of knee injuries have been related to weak hamstrings and glutes. Knee control, if you've ever watched someone do a pistol squat or any kind of like single leg deadlift, if you're watching how much their knee is moving in single-sided movements, that knee control is predominantly driven from your glute. Your glute is what is controlling your knee, and that stability. And within that little nugget of knowledge lays a lot of injury prevention. So having strong glutes and hamstrings equals having strong knees and injury prevention. So that falls under that auxiliary category as well. So injury prevention stuff, core stuff, shoulder stuff, mobility stuff, your single-sided work, your glute development, your ham development, that's all kind of in the auxiliary. So now we've got your squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, all your auxiliary work. And then after that, you're going to want some type of cardio. And then preferably some type of kind of power movements like a sled push or pull or battle ropes or tire flips, some kind of like an actual the movement of something heavy, not just picking up and setting down, like, picture like a long sled push. And then lastly, in the kind of must-haves in every program is a bit of intensity. So we're looking at, of course, burpees. Everyone knows I like burpees, but it's not all about just burpees. Like med ball slams, frog leaps, box jumps is any of those kind of more kind of explosive lower weight movements would fall into the kind of intensity category. And that would be it. So whether you've got, like I say, like 1 day or 5 days, that's kind of the mandatory pieces that you need to have in there.
That sounds, of course, there's. Yeah, so that sounds like a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Is it like, can people, like, so let's say, for example, I got Mondays and I got Wednesdays. Those are my days. I can do 45 minutes to an hour if I'm lucky a day on each of those, like that much time on each of those days. How do I split those exercises up? And is there a specific order I need to be doing those in?
Right. So, not necessarily a specific order, because, like I said, if these are the kind of the mandatories, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's really not that complicated with having more options of to do it, of like how you're going to do it. So like your squat, like there's 100 different ways to do a squat. Same thing with a lunge, same thing with a push pull. And you can kind of combine those together. Like, I really like the movement, a push-up with a renegade row. Push-up renegade row is typically what it's called, but basically you're on 2 dumbbells and you push down in the push-up, but at the top of the push-up you are rowing the dumbbell one at a time and then do another push-up. So you've now got your push and your pull and a bit of core in one movement.
Right.
So that's why I really like that one. Yeah. Just for example.
So you can be really smart about which exercises you're doing to kind of combine a lot of those key elements.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, in talking about educating people, right? If I have someone that is listening to me for long enough already to say, okay, we're looking at this more of an entire lifestyle, right? Your nutrition, your hydration, your sleep, and now your exercise. This is something that someone's going to be doing for the rest of their life. If they're on board with that concept, this next concept of, I'd rather tell you the categories of what you need to be doing, and then you can go and be creative and figure out how to do those on your own, or get a coach, or send me a message and talk to me about it. But I'd rather instill the knowledge in someone to be, okay, it doesn't have to be a barbell squat or a kettlebell squat. It could be any version of those, whatever works for you. That's the education that I'm trying to pass on.
Yeah.
The art of program writing, takes a ton of experience just to be able to have all the different ways kind of lined up that you could do that. So if someone then comes to you and says, excuse me, I can't do that push-up renegade row because my shoulder hurts, find me something else, right? That's the coach's job to move around that and be able to accomplish those same headings, right? You have your 4 main ones, then your auxiliary ones, bit of cardio, bit of power. Having the resources to be able to achieve those kind of in any situation is what it's all about. Right. So if you're saying you asked twice a week for an hour, I think was your first example.
Yeah.
So I would immediately just start breaking those up. So of your first 4, right, squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, I would just cut those. If you've got 2 days, I would cut those in half and say, do your maybe a squat and a lunge in one day, and your hinge and your push pull in your other day. Right? You've just split those up. Excuse me. So that you're getting it throughout your week. You are hitting those wave tops of of the mandatory pieces. But now we can expand on that. We have our 2 days, and they've started with, okay, it needs to have a squat, needs to have a lunge. This day needs to have a hinge and a push and a pull. And now we can tack on our accessory work or our auxiliary work onto the bottom of that. So let's say day one, you've got now squat, lunge, but you want to throw in some core, because we always need core. That was one of the top ones in the accessory list. But we also want to work on our knee control, so we're going to throw in some like side planks or some glute ham development. Although, actually, I'll probably reject that. If you've just done a squat and lunge day, let's move the glute and ham development over to the push-pull day.
Right.
So,
actually, that reminds me of something you used to nail me for all the time is, if you're going to do a rep, you make sure you can do it properly. And as soon as you can't do that rep anymore, you're done, essentially. Because if you start doing all like, well, I got to do 20 reps, I can only do 10 properly. The other 10, I can kind of do them, but you're training your body how to do the exercise improperly at that point, to a certain degree.
Yeah, it is true. What I find really interesting in there is because there's always the human component. And I've worked with enough people now to see the kind of the spectrum of some people do really well at just saying, I need you to do 15 of these. Do 15 of those. That's it. Versus, I need you to do as many of those reps as you can in 60 seconds. Right? That might also be 15. But the mental piece and the human piece and the motivational piece, some people really hate doing things for time. Like if you say, I want you to do push-ups for 60 seconds. Or I want you to do 40 push-ups. Where that goes in everyone's mind is different. And it can get really interesting when people, you can almost like, not saying that I trick my clients, but it is interesting to see like, oh, you really hated that. You left me a note that said you really hated doing push-ups for 60 seconds. If I pull that out and swap it out with just saying, okay, do 40 push-ups, it's seemingly way better and way easier, when in reality, it's the exact same thing, which kind of cracks me up. But again, that's the human component of finding out what motivates people and what keeps people going. I don't think that there's necessarily a performance gain difference there. In the big spectrum of things, like when we're talking, this is your lifestyle now. You're working out, 2 days a week or 5 days a week. You're not going to see a ton of difference in performance, but it is just another kind of tool in the toolbox to, if someone is getting bored with one particular style of working out, you can switch that up. If we've done everything on reps, but I don't care about the time for, say a year or 6 months or something, and you want that to get changed up, or you get bored of that, we say, okay, now we're going to switch some things up and do some for time. And of course, form and all that plays a role in there as well. But it's just really interesting how, to me anyway, how there's so much control in like what we're doing and how we're doing it, to keep things moving forward around injuries and around travel and around motivation and discipline.
So how do you have any guidance on how one would, so if we go, okay, we've got all our key movements and we're looking at different options. How do we know reps? How do we know sets? Like what's some good guidance around that?
Yeah. So it's basically broken down into kind of um, three categories, but more kind of two for my kind of angle of training. Like hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is just size building. No, I shouldn't say just size building. Building size is a very, very challenging thing to do. It's a very hard thing to, like, we're talking like bodybuilder style. Just growing in physical size. You're going to be um, lower in the rep range for that. Somewhere between, again, it kind of depends on where you're at in your entire program, but um, you're looking at like below 6 reps, kind of like 5. Sometimes the 5x5 falls into that category, like 5 sets of 5 reps, or like 3, like 6 sets of 3 reps. Your lower rep scheme stuff is going to fall into hypertrophy. And for dirt biking, as we've discussed before, we're not really interested in hypertrophy in dirt biking. I'm not looking to build big guys, big people. I want lean and mean. You know, picture like I think I actually, since our last podcast, I'm always thinking of good comparisons. And I realize that probably the most relatable sport to dirt biking from a physical standpoint would be like horse racing, like a horse jockey. Like when you talk about the attack position, if you've watched a horse jockey, man, they have that absolutely dialed in, and holding the reins in a little a little knot in one hand and their stick in the other, and their back is flat, ass is up. It's all legs and core. And the horse is doing this like underneath of them while their like core stays perfectly flat. It's a maybe I should get into horse jockey training, but that's another side gig for later. But yeah, so and horse jockeys, as not that I actually know any, I don't. I'd love to meet a horse jockey and talk to them about it, but none of them are big people. They're very small,
Yeah.
typically, horse jockeys, because they want the weight to be as little as possible on the horses. Um, so yeah, we're not looking for hypertrophy necessarily. We want to get strong and move well and develop enough power out of a small package. So all of my rep scheme stuff, other than like a few clients that have some like unique needs. Of course, this would all be unique to the individual on one of my programs. But if you're doing this at home, you'd want to be upwards of higher than kind of 8 reps. You'd be the 8 to 15 rep range, I think, for pretty much everything.
Right.
All of your big four, your squat, lunge, hinge, push, pull, keep in the 8 to 12, 8 to 15 kind of range. And then when you get into your accessory work or auxiliary work, same thing. Any of your single-sided stuff, whether you're doing like split squats or landmine presses or hamstring development or whatever it is, I would have it in lower. It's important to note that means also a bit lower weight, because you're not going to be lifting, huge weights at 12, 15 reps. Um, So like when that becomes easy when we're talking about your body weight movements like burpees or box jumps and stuff like that. Um, that the body weight is a good weight for, and like push-ups as well, for any of those kind of the strength and endurance building rep schemes like 8 and 12 and 15 kind of thing.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. So that brings me, so I was just thinking while we were going through that, now when you were working with me to get ready for one of the races that we did a couple years ago, um, there was a really good cardio routine you had me on, and it was intense. It was meant to build that cardio. So basically, it's kind of like a high. I guess it's kind of like a hit routine, really. So it was. I think we started at like 30 seconds, but we worked up to like 40 or 45 seconds on the stationary bike, pedaling as
Right.
hard as I could, absolute
Yep.
100% maximum effort for that amount of time. And you get off the
Yep.
bike, and then um, so and then the goal was to cool down and get the heart rate. I think it was below 120 or thereabouts, within the shortest amount of time possible. And I think
Right.
there was a target. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was like within a minute or a minute and a half. It needed to come down
Mm-hmm.
to that. And then you get on the bike again and you hit it again. Is that something specific to what we were training for, or is that something that everybody should kind of work in every once in a while on a regular basis? Like, what should people do for cardio?
Another great question. Uh, it it depends. Everything always depends on what the rest of your week looks like, because basically it's kind of like a priority list. And if you run out of time in your week, it could be lower enough down on your priority list that you would wipe it off. I think that where I've seen the most results is anyone that's riding aggressively on the weekend, the like your Saturday, Sunday, whoops, your because of the nature of the sport that we're doing, I think that a lot of that higher intensity work is occurring naturally on the bike. If I assess that that rider is riding hard enough on the weekends to achieve that kind of higher heart rates, like if you're talking like above 160, 170, like real kind of high heart rates, if you're achieving that on Saturday and Sunday already, I'm probably not going to program that to you on Tuesday and Thursday, because to me it's not more important than strength training. So if you only have, say you're riding Saturday and Sunday, or even just one, say you're just riding Sunday, and you only have 2 other days to work out, I would make those 2 days would be like fairly intense weight circuits, not one of those cardio sessions.
Okay.
Now, that being said, if you were, say, in the off season, so you're not riding and you're not achieving those high heart rates on the weekend, and it's because you're the off season that you are able to do like 5 full days a week of working out, then yeah, I would probably bring that back in, because I want that person to have that in their program somewhere. But if they're getting, does that make sense? Like if they're getting it on the bike anyway, I'm not
Yep.
going to kind of double smash them with it, because I think I think that speaks to where on the priority list I put strength training, which is very high, like the highest. it is number one is strength training, because again, my pillars and how and about riding when I'm old and being injury resilient, um, I want strength.
So you touched on something just now, the off season. So off season versus in the season, and it kind of got me thinking, what uh, what in your experience is a reasonable time frame for people with their really doubling down on this consistency thing? They got their routine down. What kind of time frame, um, give or take, right? Because everybody's different. Are we looking at to expect to see results, right? So we want to work out, we want to be healthy, we want to be stronger, fitter. Um, when like is it? Obviously, it's not going to be a week of working out and you're going to be a beast. What's the reasonable window there?
Yeah. Um, I think that the quickest you're really gonna see or feel any real tangible results. I mean, it's very, very subjective, of course, depending on how often the person can be in the gym and what their life looks like outside of the gym. But in reality, I think no one's going to see really anything before 6 months. Again, ideally, in going back to what we talked about in the beginning, this is something that, like, I don't necessarily like getting like people getting kind of their horse blinders on their these like various goals, like how quickly can I do this or that. Although, of course, I understand that if your race season starts in April, there are restrictions around there. But again, I want people to look at this as a holistic approach. Like, this is something that's going to be your whole life. Um, but yeah, if your race season starts in April and you come to me in March, there's not much we're going to be able to get done.
Right.
It takes a long time for adaptations to happen. And I think that kind of the quickest you're really going to see it is about 6 months, which is why ideally when someone's off season starts, which is typically October, if I can get someone November, December, January, February, March, April, that's just long enough to see some real results. And then ideally, because I understand, like, a lot of people leave my training or my one-on-one coaching anyway. A lot of times they go from the one-on-one coaching down to the subscription platform when their race season starts because they're just too busy. And it doesn't make sense for some of those situations. But if I could have someone for 6 months in the off season where we're kind of like, there's no restrictions, we can go pretty hard. So that's assuming they haven't like sustained an injury from the year before or something like that that's going to slow us down, or they need a surgery or whatever. But if I can get them for 6 months in the off season, and then if in a perfect world have them for 6 months of an on season as well, and keep them lifting and working out through their race season, that's where we've seen some like tremendous results.
Well, let's
That
talk.
kind of year mark,
Yeah. So let's
in 1 year you can really achieve some pretty substantial changes with that consistency piece.
right. And you have a couple clients that you're working with for the second or maybe even third season in a row now. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing in terms of results and benefits through sticking with, like talk us through some of that. So you have a client that's come to you, you work with them throughout the year, and now you're in season two. What are you noticing? What are
Yeah.
the obviously there's a big
That's well, I have a few that have been with me on and off for going into the third year. The one that sticks out the most, I've got a professional downhill mountain bike racer down in the States, and he came to me. What year would that have been? 2021, I suppose. He came to me at the end of his race season, which was the perfect time to start. So he came to me in like October or the 1st November. Went through my intake process. I have an intake form. We learn a lot about each other. Excuse me. And so he had just ended his season. No real substantial injuries. And I worked with him through that winter for the whole 6 months. And his consistency was absolutely perfect. And his nutrition is good, and his sleep is good. His life is like well set up. He's serious, and he's focused about his race season. So we did 6 months together, and then he stayed with me through his race season. Now, mountain bikers, I always say this, mountain bikers are the craziest people on the planet. Because when they crash like so hard. And they're big air, like big sends all the time. And his race season, he was racing in the Maxxis Tires Eastern States Cup, was the series. And they basically races from May to October. There's one race every 2 weeks all year, like from May to October. And it's a points-based series, which a lot of series are. So if you miss a race and are deducted a bunch of points versus even if you finish a race, but you don't place necessarily as high as you wanted to, there's still a lot of value in that. So our goal going to it was like, I was like, okay, man, like our goal is to make sure that you show up to every single race, which means we need to have rebounded from the previous race through the whole year. So we did all this work in the off season where we didn't have to like schedule around any of that. And then when his races started, I kept him lifting through the entire season. I would dial it in comparison to how his weekend just went. So if he had a real big crash or was real sore, obviously I would modify things and tone that down, and maybe do a little bit more mobility stuff and maybe some lighter cardio stuff versus like the heavy strength training. But if he came out of a weekend feeling good, I'd hammer him with like the heavy stuff again, because we have that 2 weeks to the next race to like kind of hit it hard and then taper down. The most important part is kind of tapering down into each weekend that he had a race. So all summer was just kind of like up and down and up and down and up and down of this periodization scale, and then at the end of the season, we had a video call actually about it, kind of like a bit of a celebration because of the work that we had done, and of course he's an extremely skilled rider as well, but we were able to keep him. He didn't miss a single race, and he was typically coming in, like he got on the podium a bunch, but he kind of was between like second and fifth place all year. And at the end of the season, when they calculated all the points up, he took second place overall. He was on the podium for the whole season. Like he got the silver medal in the Eastern States Cup because we were able to keep him through his crashes, through the fatigue, through the travel. He was his energy levels were high. His injury prevention or injury resiliency was high, and he collected those points. And he took second place overall, which I was, not surprisingly, ecstatic about. Um, and when that season ended, which would have been 2023, he immediately, like, he didn't even skip a day. He was just like, okay, let's go. From the very last day of racing to the very first day of racing, he already knew. He was like, this is the longest period of time where I don't have to do any periodization. We can just hammer down for like 6 months. So he rolled right back into another heavy training scenario, which was all this past winter, and he's getting ready to go for his first race here in like 4 weeks from now. So like that whole cycle, to me, that's where real performance, like high performance, resides in the people that are going to keep it a priority. They're, this is his whole life kind of thing. I mean, he does work. He doesn't mountain bike completely professionally. He'd be, I guess, semi-pro, but he's like very serious about it, and not missing any days unless he absolutely has to, like when he's sick or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's where like real results come with. None of the programs that I've given him are complicated. It's all fairly easy, and it always evolves around my 3 pillars, and it always has that kind of breakdown of what we discussed in the beginning of having, you've got your 4 mains and then some accessory work, and just being able to receive the data from the person and then modify how I apply that, the accessory work and the mains. But it's up to the person to be consistent and just keep going through it,
Right on.
So that example went really, really well.
Cool. Well, I think that gives a lot of, I think it'll give everybody who's listening to this some solid, you know, ground level basics on where to start and how to get rolling. So you got those 4 key movements that you need to be putting in there, your auxiliaries. Do you have any? I mean, you are the ultimate resource for this, but where do you have any trusted, folks that you would go to on YouTube or whoever for examples of some of these exercises that we're talking about, like a good squat or variations on squats and stuff like that? Because I mean, people can get online and they'll see all sorts of kooky shit, but there's some are better than others. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Most of the other trainers or coaches that I like are usually fairly obscure people, like Alec Blennis. He's not a dirt biker, but Alec Blennis is a world record holder in a few CrossFit sport games. But after he did that like a long time ago, and then he got into endurance sports and hybrid athlete training, which is, don't ask me how to do that because I don't know. But hybrid athletes are very high volume. Like, to be a hybrid athlete, you need to be, you're 7 days a week, usually like twice a day kind of people. People with a lot of time on their hands. But I really like the way he approaches training now. He likes to get outside of the comfort zone, I think, a lot, because people can get, I hear a lot, like, people are very worried about getting hurt in the gym. Like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's going to hurt this or hurt that. Not everyone likes to hear this, but getting hurt in the gym is probably a result of not necessarily you moving incorrectly. It's maybe you loaded a little too heavy, too quick. But there needs to be a bit of pain. Like they say no pain, no gain. Like you do, you need to sweat and you need to struggle. The struggle is where the gains are found.
Yeah.
So like I don't want anyone to get injured, but you also need to like push hard. So when I see people going in there doing like a squat, for example, or a bench press, and they're not really like straining on it, you need to strain. Like, and that's what like RPE and those kind of measurements. I don't get into RPE with my clients because I don't think a lot of people need it, but you do have to be straining. Like you have to apply effort. It's gotta suck a little bit. It takes thousands and thousands of reps to figure something out. Like nobody just goes into the gym and has a perfect squat on the first day.
That's a good point.
It takes a ton of work. So what I don't like to see happen is people go in and they start in a movement like a squat or whatever, and they get discouraged right away. Either someone comes up and tries to critique them, like in the gym, being like, bro, like you're doing that wrong or whatever. Like sometimes all it takes is just going through the motions. Your body will figure it out. I mean, it does. You do have to engage a coach at a certain point, but people want to engage a coach, I think, earlier on than necessarily they should, in some cases. When in reality, like you just got to get out there and do it. Like start lifting, and that's where I like Alec Blennis is like, because he kind of falls in that category of like just get out there and lift. Like don't go get a coach if you want one for sure, and at a certain point, depending on your goals, you'll need one, but most importantly, just go and do it. Like get out there and work those muscles, get into those positions, do some mobility training, and what do they say? Like it takes 10,000 reps or 10,000 hours to be good at anything. Like whether you're learning how to play guitar or like sew or something, it takes a certain amount of reps to be good at that anyway, no matter what it is. And weightlifting is no different.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that gives people a good starting point.
I think we have, so we described like, because we kind of bounced around a few topics there. In your 2-day scenario, right? Let's say someone's, because this is for dirt bikers, from dirt bikers. So let's just assume everyone's riding every Saturday and Sunday. If you only have 2 days to work out, on top of that, I would 100%, both of those days would be some kind of high intensity strength, like a HIIT circuit. It would have your all of your main characters, your usual suspects: squat, push pull, hinge, lunge, and your accessory work. But it would be in however much time you have, 2 days. Whether it's say you have 30 minutes, that's a really easy thing. You could set a timer to ding every 60 seconds. What did we say? We said squat and lunge in one day, and then some accessory work. So let's go squat, lunge, and then we're going to do like a dead bug and a burpee. So you've got some intensity, you got some core, and then you've got 2 of your usual suspects. So there's 4 movements. Set your timer for 30 minutes to ding every 60 seconds, and just do one for 60 seconds, this one for 60 seconds, that one for 60 seconds, and that one for 60 seconds on repeat until your time is up. There's your whole workout. And like I said, it's better to understand the concepts of what you're supposed to be doing, and then you can plug and play your own movements in there versus me telling you exactly what movements. Like, I'm not going to restrict you to only doing a barbell squat, when maybe you don't have a barbell available to you.
Right.
So, and then on the second day, I would get in your other two, your push pull and and a hinge movement. And then from the accessory list, I would pick maybe some like shoulder strength stuff and like your squat sit or some like mobility work, and do the same thing. If you want to, if you're crunched for time, you've only got that like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, set your timer for 60 seconds and do the same thing. Hit each one for 60 seconds on repeat until your timer's up. So that's what I would say to someone that only has 2 days to do something. Make sure that you get your usual suspects and then break it down into a high intensity strength circuit. If you have more than that though, let's jump up to 5. If you're riding on Saturday and Sunday, but you also have 5 days a week to work out, my favorite split for those 5 days is the 3 and 2. So 3 days would be your dedicated to your strength days, and 2 would be cardio. Now, when we're talking about cardio, we've already said that the more intense cardio you're going to get on the bike. So, and if you remember last time we talked about conditioning and like getting used to something and how soreness can kind of come out of that. So those rides on the weekend where you're conditioning yourself because, you want that seat time and you want to get your body, your hands and everything ready for that style of riding, you're automatically going to be getting some of those like fairly high heart rates of 170, 160 and up. So if you're doing that once or twice on the weekend, I'm not going to hammer you with that during the week. What I want during the week, because you're kind of already checked the box, you've got it, you have your high intensity heart rate stuff happening on the bike already. So of your 5 days, 3 of those, let's call them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, are your kind of strength days. Then it would leave Tuesday and Thursday for your cardio days. For those cardio days, I call them, I like to call them single modality steady state training. So single modality being like pick one thing, like run or bike or row, for example, is not jumping around from one to the next. Pick one. That's the single modality. And then steady state. So we're looking to get your heart rate up into like a zone 2 area, but don't get too like caught up into exactly where your heart rate's at, because it's been proven that exact numbers of heart rates and time spent in each one is a little less important than we once thought it was. So don't get caught up in that. Just go and do some fucking cardio. Do it for an hour. The only thing I try to do with people is get them to draw a straight line with it. Like, I want their heart rate to be even, whatever that is. I want you to be able to maintain it for an hour. So you've got Monday, Wednesday, Friday, your strength days. Now, maybe those look like high intensity strength circuits. Maybe they're a little more traditional kind of weightlifting circuits. Depends on the person. As long as you're getting in your usual suspects and your accessory work that's relevant to dirt biking, I think you'll be good there. And then your 2 single modality steady state days on Tuesday and Thursday, that's a big week. And but it doesn't need to be complicated.
Right.
They say one of my favorite little hashtags, not mine originally, but they say simple, not easy. And that's exactly so true. It doesn't need to be complicated. People get so wrapped up in making sure it's like got every tiny little piece and has 1,000 different movements. For me, I like to keep things shit simple. So like most of my workouts aren't going to have more than 4 movements in them. Usually 2 to 4 movements will be the entire workout. And then you're either going to do those like minute on, minute off, or a certain amount of reps, kind of back and forth, depending on what we're working on. The point is that it doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be consistent. Get in your usual suspects and some dirt biking relevant accessory work consistently, and you'll be good. Like, and then couple that with a bit of like steady state cardio. That's a good plan. Now, of course, the reason people come to me, as I've already said, is like people run out of ideas and they run out of how to do that. And like, what are the usual suspects again? And what is the relevant accessory work to dirt biking? And by all means, that's exactly what I'm here for. That plus applying that, like you're making a salad here, right? You've taken our knowledge of what we need to be doing, but then you need to marry that with somebody's lifestyle, you know. And if they're like super busy and super stressed with work, or they're traveling all the time, or maybe they've got young kids and they're, you know, not sleeping well, or whatever, like that's my role of tapering people in and out of their races, modifying things around injuries and modifying things around the equipment that they have available to them and their lifestyle, so that they're still getting what we've discussed, your usual suspects, your accessory work that's relevant to dirt biking, a bit of cardio, and then just like package that all on top of somebody's, you know, obnoxious lifestyle. It can be really, really challenging for someone to do. So if anyone out there has questions, please just send them my way. But my answers will come back to this podcast, because I think that this is a ton of good information.
Yeah, for sure. So folks will definitely start. I would recommend you start with what we just talked about. And like you said, if you feel like you need help or you want to take it to the next level, definitely give Steve a shout. And then,
and that's exactly what I've done with the like I've explained before. I have my one-on-one clients where I follow them through the race season and everything's getting tapered in and tapered out, blah blah blah. But I also run my subscription-based app, where if you don't want the one-on-one piece with me, but also the dollar value that is attached to, but you still want the workouts, they're right there on the app. The link is in my bio for the Workout of the Month Club. And so what I've done, I based it on a 5-day schedule, assuming everyone's riding on Saturday and Sunday. At the start of each month, I fill up Monday, Wednesday, Friday with new strength sessions, and then Tuesday, Thursday with new cardio sessions. And you're still getting, so now you don't have to worry about am I getting the right movements in? Are the usual suspects in there? Is the accessory work in there? It is in there. I write it myself at the start of each month, so you can follow along. And if you've only got 2 days, even though I've written 5, just pick any of the 2 days that you want to do. Right, it's all there. So you're checking all the boxes right there on the subscription-based app. You just have to worry about your race season and your lifestyle kind of stuff to make sure you're supporting yourself to the max for that.
All right. So at Thrash Motoco on the Instagram, link in the bio for the subscription-based service. And if you're serious, give Steve a PM, and he'll hook you up. What are we going to talk about next? What's the next episode?
Ooh.
We got our basics: nutrition, hydration, sleep. We got some good workout routines. What's the next?
I'd like to debunk a few myths.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
There's a few myths, or I maybe not necessarily debunk, but put some more definition on a few common things that I see and hear. Like the one that pops in my mind first is just talking about cardio and what cardio is and how we use it and how we get it, how we make gains in it. There's a few details in there that we could pick apart a little bit.
Okay.
And then mobility. We could spend a whole session just on mobility if you wanted.
Sure. Well, mobility is key. I mean, I'm finding the older I get, the more important it is.
I hear that one phrase, what you just said, a lot.
Yeah, I mean, especially most people, they sit around a lot for their jobs, and it does not do them any favors in life. So
yep.
I'm all about the mobility, so I'm down with that. Okay.
Yep.
Well,
absolutely.
I think that's been a good show. I hope everybody gets some value out of that. I think they will.
Yeah. So maybe we just confuse people more. I don't know.
That's what the Instagram page is for. PM Steve, if you got all these questions.
Yeah,
cool.
Hit me up.
All right, man. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Anytime. Let's keep it going.
I'm gonna catch you next time.
Okay. Cheers. Thanks, bud.
Bye.